Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming here this morning, and particularly appreciative of the fact that I know this was originally scheduled about a week back for yesterday. Not only were we able to turn on a dime, but we actually got 9 cents change out of this thing, which was very helpful. So it's great all you could attend this beautiful, recently renovated Indian Treaty Room. It's always been one of my favorite buildings here in the EEOB. And I think it's appropriate that not only are we having this meeting here, but we also to get it to have it streamed via the internet at the same time. Today, as I think you're very much aware, we're teamed up with internet service providers, multi-stakeholder leadership from different sectors, financial services, to announce new and developed initiatives to address one of the biggest threats we've been dealing with, and by no stretch of the imagination, a long-time threat we have on the internet, BOTNETS. You know, when we start looking at why should we care as we go back for years and years in dealing with BOTNETS, I think there's some things that we've been able to learn over the years. One, it does have an adverse impact on our economy, whether it's an individual, whether it's a business, or whether it's a community, as we've seen happen in the past. Clearly, there's an economic impact. There's also a major issue where it's an infringement on our personal privacy. I mean, that's one of the things that oftentimes gets lost in a lot of the discussions about the financial impact. It's our personal privacy's at risk, not only for individual computer systems, but those other entities that hold information for us as well. And the part that, of course, that really adds another dimension of this is the impact on our national's critical infrastructure. When we look at the national level issues for critical infrastructure, and we've said this for years and years and years, how interconnected we are, when we deal with botnets, botnets also have an ability to impact that. People ask all the time about what are the motivations of different groups, whether they're nation state, whether they're cyber criminals, whether they're hacktivists, foreign intelligence service, you name whatever the group may be, their motivations may differ, but oftentimes what we see is a common thread, and that's the use and proliferation of botnets. It's probably one of the most widely used malicious tools that's out there in the toolbox. You'll hear later on there's over 5 million new botnet infections that occur every month. Roughly 1 in 10 Americans have some sort of malicious software on their computer systems or even their mobile device. Frustratingly, one of the things I think we've all lamented is using our own computer power against us. And that's one of the things that we've got to deal with, and how we can beat this back so our own systems are not being used against us to compromise our own infrastructure. Some think the presence of malware, particularly the pervasive presence of malware, is the price of doing business. But it's not the case. We don't need this. We can deal with it. We can help reduce the likelihood of these not only becoming infected, but once found, to be able to deal with it in a manner which shuts it down quickly. So our vital economic times are upon us. You know, I think there is, from the government to businesses to individuals, we're all looking for ways to do things smarter, do things better, to save money, and clearly in this case, we have an opportunity here as we all come together to do a better job on that as well. So on the botnets specifically, I think like many things in cybersecurity, this is much larger than any one company, any specific country, any specific government or individual. That's why it's so important we get this right. So it's, I think, even more fitting that today we are teaming with internet service providers, search engines, trade associations, education alliances, privacy rights groups, and internet vendors to tackle this on all fronts. And that's not to suggest for a moment that this is something everybody just woke up to and said, gee, we need to get everybody together and do this. We've had a lot of good efforts over the years. Some of the companies here have been involved not only on identifying but also remediating those issues, notifying end users. But what we're trying to do is harness all that power as a collective and really work hard to do more than what we've been doing thus far as a collective group. Also to put together industry best practices and voluntary principles aimed at addressing the botnet challenges that we see today. Today I'm fortunate to be joined by Pat Gallagher from NIST. Pat was with us last week at another big announcement we had here at the White House. His team at the Department of Commerce has built long-standing industry and government efforts in identifying what are some of the key areas where cooperation could be enhanced by bringing all these various sectors together. I'm also very grateful and thankful to Julius Janikowski, our FCC Commissioner, for joining us and the work that he's been doing at FCC and working collaboratively, once again, in a voluntary manner with the Internet service providers. But I'd also like to thank the steering committee members of the Industry BOTNET Group. They've taken a notable step forward in bringing all the different forces that we have together to make this work. So today we're going to talk a little bit, we're going to showcase some of the strategic initiatives and excellent work that the IBG has accomplished, which now it aims to make actionable. It's a proven model. We've been able to bring the financial services ISAC and BITS, and thanks to Bill Nelson for the work that's being done here, and bringing all these forces together, adding that to the collaborative efforts that the FCC is bringing and the recommendations from the ISPs. So today's initiative charts a new course for all multi-stakeholders to implement an industry-wide, nationally focused, and globally aware plan to address botnet threats. With that, I'd start today by inviting our government leaders to kick off this morning announcement. And Pat, over to you.
Thank you, Howard. Good morning, everybody. It's great to see so many friends and partners in this effort together. Let me start with a thank you to Howard. As many of you know, this is one of his last events before he gets on his Harley-Davidson and heads back to the West Coast. And this is Howard's work here in the White House has been a capstone to a remarkable career of public service. And for that alone, we should thank him. But I also owe him a special thanks because in tackling this very difficult job, having really two bosses, reporting simultaneously to both the national security and the national economic side of the White House, he made it work. And he made working with industry a centerpiece of his approach to almost everything he did. And you see that in NSTIC, and you certainly see it in what we're here today. So, Howard, I think the ultimate compliment for a public service, a servant, is you made a difference for the country. We really appreciate it. I also wanted to acknowledge this gathering here today. We're here for an obvious reason. Botnets are increasingly a problem. They put consumers at risk. They lead to monitoring consumers' personal information, communications, and exploitation of our own computing power against us. These threats go well beyond just the infected computers. The network of bots are then used to disseminate spam, store, and transfer illegal content, and attack our information infrastructure with massive distributed denial-of-service attacks. This is not new. This is not a new phenomenon, and their existence continues to increase, continues to increase the cost of doing business online. It places our companies at a competitive disadvantage, and it threatens our individual privacy and security. And it's for this reason that the analysts at Gartner call botnets the heavy artillery of cybercrime. Botnets are also interesting in the fact that they're an asymmetric threat. They're a collective action using our own computer resources against us. And if that's the nature of the threat, it also suggests that a collective response might be the way to most effectively address this. And that's why we're here today. To begin to address this problem, last September, NIST joined our colleagues from the Department of Homeland Security and issued a request for information called an RFI to solicit input from the public on the growing concern around the botnet security risks. The RFI sought input on a wide range of areas, including practices to help identify, prevent, notify, and mitigate botnet infections. And we received over 24 very thoughtful comments from a wide range of stakeholders, and interestingly, with a surprisingly similar view on how to combat this problem. Through this process and the engagement that followed, we learned that many leading companies, many of you in this room, this included Comcast, CenturyLink, and Google, have begun efforts to detect and notify their customers that they are infected without invading the individual's privacy. Microsoft and others have begun to take action against botnets in the courts, and around the world, other countries have begun creating codes to help alert consumers and encourage these type of efforts. And yet, despite all of this progress that was occurring, there was no unified U.S. effort. We felt strongly that we needed to define and create a U.S. vision if we were going to successfully work together and be successful in stopping the threat from botnets. We made it clear that the effort should be voluntary, it should be stakeholder-driven, and it should take advantage of the expertise and experience of industry and civil society. If botnets can be made to cause less damage, while we're not going to solve all of the cybersecurity challenges facing us, we can make it much more difficult for criminals to attack key systems. And indeed, industry has taken us up on this call to action. In February, 11 leading trade, security, and safety groups introduced the Industry Botnet Group, or IBG, and today, only 4 months later, we are already seeing the fruits of this labor. The IBG principles represent the first ever effort to create overarching botnet notice, education, and remediation principles. The codes of conduct for different sectors can be written based on these principles. And industry groups have also begun a campaign aimed at botnets, building around a focus group tested slogan, keep a clean machine, that we will all be seeing and hearing about over the next year. The federal government's role was really a convener in this case. In a public-private partnership, this partnership reminds me a little bit of a potluck dinner. We sent out the invitations and provided a nice venue, but you did all the cooking. And I think that's a compelling and powerful solution in this case. But we have our own role in the federal sector to play as well. It is our job to continue to work with industry and continue to support your efforts to address this threat. As we speak this morning, NIST is opening a workshop. This will be the first time a workshop of this type has been hosted to look at the technical issues associated with botnet threats and to discuss definitions, metrics, and methodologies, as well as the technologies and tools, roles and responsibilities that we can bring to bear to address this. In essence, creating a technical toolbox or framework for action. It is clear that these efforts are only beginning of what we have to do. But I am convinced that working together in a robust public-private partnership like this, we can certainly tackle this problem. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pat. And it's once again, it's with great pleasure I'd like to introduce the FCC Chairman, Julius Genachowski. Julius.
Thank you. First, Howard, let me join in the chorus of praise and goodbyes. I'll just add a couple of points to Pat's eloquent words. One, Pat mentioned that you've had an incredible career in public service, and that's true. You've also had an incredible career in the private sector. And you're a testament to the importance and value of having people from the private sector in important roles of government being able to work on the kinds of initiatives that we're talking about today. So I thank you for coming into government, and I hope you'll be a model for many other talented people to come in and make a commitment to public service. The other point, of course, is that you are the first person ever to serve as cybersecurity coordinator for the White House. This is something that President Obama announced very early in his presidency. The position itself reflects the need for a coordinated interagency effort to tackle the challenge of cybersecurity. And the steps that we've taken and are taking at the FCC, at the Commerce Department, by the IBG are testaments to the terrific work that Howard has done. Speaking of the FCC's work, I want to thank Glenn Post, who is here, the CEO of CenturyLink. Ensuring the security and reliability of commercial networks has long been at the core of the FCC's mission. Years ago, we stood up an expert advisory panel called CSRIC. People in this room probably know that it stands for the Communication Security, Reliability, and Interoperability Council. In fact, an earlier iteration of CSRIC became one of the first federal entities to develop cybersecurity best practices back in 2001. Well, over the last year, Glenn Post led CSRIC cybersecurity working groups comprised of private sector representatives from across multiple industries, other members of government, academics, some of whom are in the room today. And those working groups have delivered practical solutions to specific problems, solutions that will materially improve the security of our broadband network. So thank you, Glenn. Thank you to the companies, Comcast, others who participated in the CISRIC efforts. Howard's work, Pat's work, the work that we've done at the FCC, all follow a set of key points about tackling the cybersecurity challenges that I just wanted to mention briefly. Cyber attacks are a new and different kind of threat from what we faced in the past. Tackling them requires a new kind of approach. First, addressing cyber threats requires the commercial communications ecosystem to engage in a way that prior threats simply didn't require. Private networks are a major part of our internet communications. They're a major part of e-commerce, of online banking, of all the various ways that we interact with each other today. If you bring down the internet, you really bring down our economy and much of our society. So we need the private sector to proactively engage on increasing the security of our commercial networks. Second, cyber threats require interagency collaboration on the government side. I'd argue a new level of interagency collaboration. Different agencies have different areas of expertise, different responsibilities, all relevant to tackling the cybersecurity challenges that we have. And the third key point is that in tackling cyber threats, we need to do it in a way that preserves the ingredients that have fueled the growth and success of the internet. That means solutions that preserve internet freedom, the open architecture of the internet, which have been so essential to the internet's success as an engine of innovation and economic growth. Privacy is a similarly vital principle. Privacy and security are complementary. I think this is something that everyone who's been involved in these processes recognize. Both are essential to consumer confidence in the internet and to the adoption of broadband. Another key component for problem solving in this area, the multi-stakeholder model. Pat was eloquent on this. The history of the internet tells us that the multi-stakeholder model can produce real solutions. It's the approach we've taken at the FCC. It's also the approach that IBG is taking. I'm pleased that DHS, along with NIST, have partnered in the FCC's work. I'm pleased that the FCC has participated in the IBG process. You're seeing healthy interagency collaboration, and then the government collaborating with multiple players in the private sector to produce concrete results that are solving real problems. At the FCC side in March, CISREC's BOTNET working group presented a practical, voluntary U.S. anti-bot code of conduct, or ABC as we call it, to reduce the threat of bots in residential broadband networks. It was focused on ISPs, and ISPs representing over 90% of U.S. internet subscribers have committed to implementing the code of conduct. The ABC provides for improved detection by ISPs of bots in their customers' computers and to notify consumers when their computers have been infected. It provides for making tools available for remediating bots, and it also includes steps to educate consumers so they can look for signs that their computers have been infected. These ideas are similar to the ones you've already heard before, and this is a testament of the fact that all these concentric circles are working together to maximize effective, efficient solutions to a problem like botnets, which I agree with the prior speakers, we can make material progress on. I'm proud that the joint industry effort that we convened at the FCC also included steps on DNSSEC and IP route hijacking, and I recognize that all of this represents one facet in what must be a multi-pronged, ongoing effort to tackle botnets, and that in itself is only a part of the broader cybersecurity challenge. But the model for identifying concrete problems, assembling the right group of experts inside and outside government, and challenging them to develop and implement practical solutions is one that we are seeing working. And with ongoing private sector engagement, interagency collaboration, and a commitment to the principles that have fueled the internet's success, with the ongoing work of the people from the multiple agencies who are here. We have our new Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau Chief at the FCC, David Turetsky, people from NIST, the Commerce Department, DHS, obviously the White House, OSTP, and many companies from the private sector, too many to acknowledge. But with this group continuing to work together with the principles that we all subscribe to, I'm confident that we can make a real difference in increasing the security of the internet and harnessing its enormous opportunities for all Americans. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julius. And once again, in leadership areas, both Julius and Pat have really done a great job in bringing all these pieces together, so thank you once again. Anyway, you know, when we start looking at the work that we've got to do in the future, as well as the work we've done in the past, I mean, we've said for many times, it's a private-public partnership. And I think when we talk about partnerships, we've, over the years, redefined what it means to have a partnership. But I think we've gotten to a point now with the partnership that we have is really embodied in the highest level of the various companies and the private sector folks we work with on a regular basis. You know, what we're looking for, particularly in cyberspace, is to deal with the threats. And these things don't prescribe any particular means or method to allow for how we deal with those, but basically to be able to move as we do with the development of the internet itself specifically. The people that do that well, that have led in it, are with us today, the next three speakers, Glenn Post, Michael Desar, and Brad Smith, and they'll be in a moment speaking about the industry's coordinating solutions, and how they deal with botnet remediation. So first, I'd like to start with Glenn Post. And Glenn, thank you once again for coming back to D.C. 2 weeks in a row for White House meetings. Appreciate it.
I appreciate the introduction, the chairman's kind words as well. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I want to congratulate Howard again for his many years of public service. It's been really a privilege to work with Howard on the National Security Telecommunications Advisory Committee, where he's provided really outstanding leadership for that effort, and your leadership and your presence will certainly be missed, Howard. Thank you for what you've done and continue to do. I'm pleased to speak to you briefly today about our industry's leadership role in helping consumers and businesses with botnet remediation. I'm pleased we've created successful voluntary partnerships with the White House, the Federal Communications Commission, the Department of Commerce, Department of Homeland Security, and other federal agencies. I thank the administration for its leadership on cyber issues and for being a good partner and participant in these public-private partnerships we have developed. Just a little about CenturyLink. We are the third largest telecommunications company in the United States. We're a member of the Fortune 200, a leading provider of data hosting and other telecom services. We provide internet, broadband, voice, data, managed services to consumers, businesses, and government agencies. We have a 220,000-mile national fiber network, more than 50 data centers across North America, Europe, and into Asia. Our customers range from some of the country's largest businesses to some of the smallest rural areas of the country, families in those small rural areas. Chairman Janikowski asked me to take a leadership role on the cyber issues by serving as chairman of the FCC's Security, Reliability, and Interoperability Council, known as CISRIC, that Howard mentioned earlier. In this capacity, we worked with more than 50 panel members to develop best practices that the industry can use to ensure the security and reliability of our nation's communication systems. I'll assure you that internet service providers have a strong interest in maintaining robust protections and countermeasures against cyber threats of all types, including malicious spyware and botnets. We recognize that to be truly successful in ensuring the integrity of our core asset, which is the network, we must preserve the trust and confidence of our customers in that network. This means we strive to provide a safe, secure, and friendly online environment for them to conduct business, interact with the government, and connect with family and friends around the world. CenturyLink initiated its own botnet remediation program about 6 years ago, and we saw an escalating pattern of malicious software attacks that were used to take control of computers and link them into botnet networks. These networks were designed to launch spam, cyber attacks, and financial crimes that put personal information and business data at risk. In CenturyLink's case, we partnered with trusted third parties that could recognize and identify infected computers. We credit continued technological innovation, good customer service practices, and forward-looking outreach activities with helping us make our customers aware of possible cyber infection. We were able to introduce customers to online resources that successfully resolve malware intrusions, and we continually evolve the program to keep up with a changing cybersecurity environment. This consumer and business protection program is just one example of how CenturyLink works to assure our customers' trust. I know that other internet service providers, a number of which are represented in this room today, have taken similar measures to protect and inform their customers as well. CenturyLink actively seeks opportunities to work with others in the cyber ecosystem to improve our customers' experience. We continually work with the FBI and other law enforcement agencies as appropriate to assist in their efforts to control cybercrime. We've recently been working with the leading financial services companies that often find themselves a target of botnet-initiated attacks. CenturyLink's efforts are consistent with the tenets outlined in the CISRIC's Voluntary Code of Conduct and the Industry Botnet Group's voluntary principles. We support the Industry Botnet Group's principles and look forward to working with our partners in government and in the broader industry ecosystem to further these principles and related practices. There are numerous participants in these public-private initiatives, and each party brings different strengths and competencies to the table. The carriers and internet service providers certainly cannot do it alone. It is our combined capabilities and competencies that put us in a stronger and more effective position to counter the threat of botnets and improve the safety of the internet and America. We made significant progress in the botnet arena, but there's more to be done. As cyber threats continue to evolve, we are prepared to build on the strong foundation of voluntary public-private partnerships highlighted here today. By working together, we can continue to combat cyber crimes and improve our ability to stop them before they happen. On behalf of our customers and all Americans who use the internet, I thank you for asking CenturyLink and our industry to assist with this vital national issue.
Thanks very much, Glenn. I'd like at this time, Michael, invite you up from CEO of McAfee.
Thank you. So on behalf of McAfee, I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to participate in this event today. I want to congratulate Howard on the many stakeholders of government, as well as the members of the IBT, for their important steps in taking on this challenge of botnets. I'm especially pleased that we're taking on this problem together, as we believe that collaboration is the most essential component in the war against botnets and the broader threats that come with cybercrime. As the world's largest dedicated security technology company, serving the consumer, governments, and the largest of enterprises, McAfee has a very strong and first-hand understanding of the world's toughest security challenges that are out there, including the proliferation of botnets. Bots are essentially individual machines that are compromised and then linked together by criminals. They leverage the power of shared computing to put citizens' personal data and finances at risk and threaten vital government and private sector institutions that are fundamental to our nation's economic and security interests. The government's focus on botnets is very appropriate, because botnets are a key distribution method for malware and phishing attacks that have been the end goal of stealing financial information, identities, and key intellectual property. Botnets can also be used to gain intelligence, compromise security, and create the access required by advanced persistent threats, or APTs, the insidious, persistent threats that fly below the radar and quietly explore and steal the contents on the larger networks that they exploit. Because of their stealth, APTs in particular are a problem. In the last couple of years, we've uncovered numerous APTs that have affected tens of thousands of machines. Today, botnets are mostly in the hands of crime syndicates. These syndicates run professional shops with quality assurance processes, and they leverage the latest in peer-to-peer technology to avoid the simple takedowns in the past. Everyone in the room knows that this threat is real and growing, and indeed we encounter these new threats by the minute. Based on our most recent lab's quarterly report, more than 5 million systems were infected with botnets between January and March of 2012. We're often asked as a security organization what can be done to combat botnets. And here is the basic answer. We need to make sure these machines do not get infected in the first place. We need to do this by delivering security at a faster pace than our adversaries can deliver malware. The security industry, the ISPs, and the world governments will all have to collaborate in a much more meaningful way for us to achieve this vision. The security and IT industries, of course, have a central role to play, and while we all have different technologies to address threats, we should focus on integrating them, similar to how SAP and Oracle have done in the enterprise resource planning, or ERP world. The companies provide a set of integration technologies that enable partners and independent software companies to integrate their solutions seamlessly into their products, ultimately benefiting the customer. The security industry needs to take a similar approach. The number of IP-enabled devices is expected to grow to over 50 billion by the year 2020. And with the explosion in connected devices comes an explosion in the number of attack surfaces that we have to defend. As an industry, we must adapt. We must respond to this escalating threat landscape. We must unify, simplify, and strengthen the way that we provide security by utilizing a framework for integrating potentially disparate technologies, building bridges between these security islands, and to close coverage and technology gaps. At McAfee, we call this approach security connected, and we're confident that when such integration occurs in the security industry, our customers will receive the benefit the same way that many of the customers of those ERP vendors have. With cybersecurity integration, security companies and their customers will be able to quickly and comprehensively detect and deter botnets. Indeed, having real-time visibility into emerging threats and a comprehensive view across the threat landscape is a powerful means of defeating botnets, which can multiply extremely quickly. One robust technology that enables this real-time visibility is called Global Threat Intelligence. With Global Threat Intelligence, or GTI, millions of sensors scan the internet across the globe and provide real-time feedback on botnets and other threats. This data is then instantly correlated and fed back into the security products, delivering real-time protection to customers, as we identify the block and the malicious files used by the botnets. With even more threat data coming from security organizations fed into this network, customers would get even a more comprehensive visibility into the quickly changing pattern of botnets and could take immediate steps to counter them. In addition to having real-time global visibility into the botnet threat, we also need to combat the threat before it even begins. We can do this by taking the mantra of security by design, or hardware-assisted security, a concept that is central to McAfee and our parent company's Intel's ongoing efforts to develop software, hardware, services, and integrated solutions designed to improve cybersecurity across the compute continuum. Basically, it isn't nearly as effective to add security after the fact as it is to build that security into those solutions when they're initially being developed. This is particularly important in defeating botnets because the most sophisticated botnets are attacking systems below the application level. Hardware-assisted security can deter botnets by not allowing them to gain access in the first place. Finally, I have some policy recommendations. We need to enable private sector companies to combine real-time threat information with that of the other private sector entities and with the government, just as global threat intelligence does in machine correlation. The federal government needs new authority to share classified cyber threat information with approved companies and organizations so they can better protect themselves and their customers and their personal information against cyber attacks. This is particularly important for ISPs, which route all our internet traffic and thus are very central to our connected and threat-filled world. Enabling private sector information sharing on a completely voluntary basis is also an important part of this equation, provided it can be done in a way that protects privacy and civil liberties. Building trust in the global digital infrastructure requires not only strengthening security, but also protecting personal information and security as well. We also believe that positive incentives are superior to regulation, for with our overregulation, we run the risk of creating a compliant cyber ecosystem, not necessarily a more secure one. Examples of positive incentives include litigation and legal reform, tax incentives, insurance reforms, and increasing funding for competitions, scholarships, and R&D. Thank you again to Howard for hosting this event and for the IBG for the work that has been accomplished to date, especially the principals. The collaborative work of this group is absolutely headed in the right direction, with positive incentives for real-time light-speed information sharing, the public-private initiatives of groups such as the IBG, and international cooperation. We can defeat botnets and achieve the result that we all want, a secure cyber world. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Michael. Brad Smith, General Counsel from Microsoft, please join us, and thank you again for all that you've been doing.
Well, thank you, Howard, and thank you, Patrick, and let me join everyone else in thanking and congratulating you, Howard. It's been an amazing career in both the public and private sectors, and I'm one person who can speak as a former colleague, having worked together at Microsoft in the private sector. It's wonderful to join you on a day like today. This is obviously an important problem we're here to address, and as you've heard, we as an industry pride ourselves on innovation. I think that's appropriate. But unfortunately, we're not the only ones who innovate. Criminals innovate as well. And indeed, it's always been this way. When Benjamin Franklin founded the Postal Service for the United States, before the government even moved to Washington, D.C., criminals got to work inventing mail fraud. In the 19th century, just before this building was built, the inventors of a new generation created the telegraph, and criminals invented wire fraud. In the 20th century, banks created credit cards, and criminals created credit card fraud. So it's perhaps not a surprise in the least that the early decades of the 21st century are marked by a focus on internet fraud. And just as these prior problems, mail fraud, wire fraud, credit card fraud, are still with us today, we have to act on the assumption that criminal enterprises will remain focused on exploiting technology in new ways. We have to move faster than they do if we're going to be effective, if we're going to control this problem to a greater degree than we have today. As you've heard, botnets are the artillery of the internet. They are the armament of choice, without question, for criminal enterprises operating on the internet, and it's easy to see why. They add power and create a truly potent threat to all of us who use computers today. We saw this perhaps most clearly in one of the cases that we worked on, the Rostock botnet. It had the capability to send 30 billion spam messages every single day, without exception. And it wasn't until we disrupted and stopped that botnet that we were able to make a significant dent in a problem that was literally impacting hundreds of millions of people around the planet. The sheer magnitude of that problem makes one thing all too clear. This is not a problem that anyone can solve alone. No government can solve it by itself. No company can solve it by itself. No individual can even hope to make a difference acting alone. We all need to work together. And that's why this announcement today is so important. It builds on improving coordination over the last couple of years, and it takes it a very important step farther. Already, we've been fortunate to have very strong leadership from the administration and from the government here in the United States. The FBI has been a leader, pioneering new law enforcement techniques, as we saw with its work on the CoreFlood botnet over the last year or two. Many of us in industry have acted as well, but it truly takes the coming together of everyone involved, bringing, as you put it so well, our own contribution to the new dinner that needs to be created if we are going to impact these problems the way we need to. At Microsoft, we've been focused on trying to address this problem in three distinct ways. First, we focus, as many technology companies do, on creating software and hardware that is more resilient to botnet attacks in the first place. Second, we focused on our own efforts to use the law to disrupt botnets that have been created. Through the work of our Digital Crimes Unit, we've undertaken a number of legal and enforcement efforts, and we've had a number of key victories. And finally, we've worked together with many others in the industry to remediate the problems, to reach out to consumers, to let them know that their PC or their other computing device in their home, in their bedroom, or in their kitchen has been, in fact, captured and infected by a botnet, and to give people the tools that they can easily use to clean their machines and make them secure once again. All of these efforts require a focus not only on security, but a sensitivity to privacy. These are complementary issues, as Chairman Janikowski mentioned, but it also requires us always to keep both of these aspects in mind and to strike the right balance between them. I think that the IBG formation 4 months ago was a significant step forward, and the fact that we have new principles today that are being announced and are being signed really creates the opportunity for us to do even more. And as companies are given the opportunity to sign these principles, we at Microsoft look forward to being among the first companies to put our name and to provide our support to what these principles mean and what they will give us the opportunity to work on doing together. Ultimately, in addition to those of us in industry, it's important for us to remember, and it's important for us to communicate, that every individual in every home across the country has an opportunity to help solve this problem as well. As you've heard, we in the industry have created the tools that can easily be used by people who have computers to ensure that their computers remain secure. We, in effect, have created a lock for every door, but it's up to the individual in every home to lock their own doors on their own computers. And it will take a continuing education effort to reach out to people to ensure that they use the tools that we have provided. But if we continue to move forward with this kind of effort, I think we'll have the opportunity to look back 2 or 3 or 5 years from now and see that this day did provide us with an important milestone in our efforts. The bringing together of a public and private partnership in this way should be something that not only enables us to take new steps, it can be something that inspires us to do so as well. It is a new step, but it's not the last step. It needs to become the next step in what we will do going forward. This is not a problem that will go away, but it is something that we can get under control to a far greater degree than it is today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brad. And I'd like to, once again, Glenn, Michael, Brad, thank you for your leadership in the companies, because when we talk about private-public partnerships, it comes from leadership at the top, and you're all there, so thank you very much. I'd like to, at this point, introduce Ari Schwartz, who probably to this group needs no introduction, but who has been very instrumental in working from the Department of Commerce side, working with the resident departments and agencies, and more importantly, with the IBG. So, Ari.
Thank you, Howard. Thanks for your leadership. We're going to miss you. As Undersecretary Gallagher mentioned, last fall, the Departments of Homeland Security and Commerce worked together to put out a request for information to focus on the growing concern of botnets. While we received many comments from a wide range of stakeholders, a real consensus did emerge among the kinds of comments that we received. We worked to help to bring those stakeholders that had commented and had similar views together to discuss their areas of agreement. And the industry leaders told us that they were very optimistic about what they could accomplish voluntarily, and soon after formed the industry botnet group that you've heard about. Indeed, in a relatively short period of time, the industry botnet group has been able to take unprecedented action. Speaking on behalf of the steering committee for the IBG will be Liesl Franz, Vice President at Tech America.
Thank you, Ari. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here for this event. I'm honored to be here today to mark important work in furthering our efforts to combat botnets. I'm also honored to be here to say a few words on behalf of the Industry Botnet Group, represented by those associations and organizations standing up here and the many, many companies they represent, some of which are here with us today. The Industry Botnet Group, or IBG, formed in early this year to reflect existing efforts and pool resources to take collaborative action to reduce the impact of botnets. You heard earlier from Howard and our other distinguished speakers about the deleterious effect of botnets, the proliferation of which threatens to undermine the efficiencies, innovation, and economic growth of the internet and diminish the trust and confidence of online users. It bears repeating that no one entity can combat these security challenges alone. Individually, we can take measures to defend ourselves, and together we can do even more to protect the internet ecosystem. Today, we are releasing our principles for voluntary efforts to reduce the impact of botnets and sharing our framework for shared responsibility. There are 4 inalienable concepts we wanted to convey in the principles that would capture the importance and complexity of the issue of combating botnets. First, efforts to combat botnets may vary depending on the role of the participant in the internet space, their business model, and their relationship to online users and enterprises. That variety is reflected in the participants in the IBG itself, from software and services to cable and communications, from IT and integrators, as well as the financial services industry. Second, the IBG is not the first effort at mitigating botnets. Other efforts have been and continue to be underway, and the IBG works to reflect and complement existing work, not duplicate it. Fortunately, much of that good work is being done by our own participants, so we have a rich resource for reference and lessons learned. Third, the principles are intended to support efforts that are voluntary and led by the private sector, allowing industry to respond nimbly to dynamic cyber threats. As such, we did not want to prescribe any particular means or method, but rather allow for flexibility in application by a wide range of participants and business models. As diverse as the membership of the IBG is today, it does not currently represent every sector of our economy. We wanted the principles to be able to be applied by any industry player. And fourth, the internet is a shared resource, and all participants in cyberspace benefit from a safe, trusted, online environment. With that introduction to our philosophy, let me outline our 9 principles that call on internet participants to voluntarily take the following steps. Share cyber responsibilities. Participants should employ reasonable technologies and sound practices appropriate in the context of their business to thwart the effectiveness of botnets across the botnet lifecycle of prevention, detection, notification, remediation, and recovery. Coordinate across sectors. To better analyze, prevent, and combat threats, participants should share information about botnet incidents and other malicious activities among public, private, and nonprofit stakeholders. Confront the problem globally. Cybersecurity, and specifically the proliferation of botnets and malware, is a global problem requiring global attention, and participants should foster greater cooperation and cross-border collaboration between and among industry and government. Report your lessons learned. In the appropriate manner and context, participants should share lessons learned, particularly their view of the effectiveness of various tactics, technologies, sound practices, and other tried measures to thwart the effectiveness of botnets across the lifecycle. Educate users. Participants should make available access to resources to help educate customers to defend against and remediate from infections by botnets and malware, and to illustrate the relationship between staying safer online and making the internet more secure for everyone. Preserve flexibility. There is no single solution to address the dynamic threat of botnets and malware, and efforts should remain flexible, allowing participants to undertake activities appropriate to their core competencies, resources, and customer needs. Promote innovation. Efforts to reduce the impact of botnets and malware should promote innovation and support the inclusion of new technologies, strategies, approaches, and participants to better combat threats and protect customers. Respect privacy. While working to further trust and confidence online, Participants should address privacy and security in the appropriate manner and abide by applicable laws and practices. And 9, navigate the complex legal environment. Barriers to addressing cyber threats may exist in today's complex global legal and regulatory environment, and any initiatives undertaken by participants should comply with applicable laws and regulations. These principles reflect the life cycle of botnet mitigation by encouraging prevention, raising awareness of the threat of botnets, improving detection, notifying computer users who are infected, providing access to remediation resources, and speeding recovery from the impact of botnets and malware. That's the framework on which we base the principles, our ongoing efforts toward education and awareness, prospective efforts to measure the botnet challenge and the solutions, and continued innovation and development of new technologies. Every participant has a role in helping to reduce the impact, and that is why we came together, to work together. Let me introduce the broad group representing the IBG Steering Committee here today. BITS for the Financial Services Roundtable, the Business Software Alliance, the Online Trust Alliance, the Messaging Anti-Abuse Working Group, the National Cable Telecommunication Association, the Software Information Industry Association, the National Cybersecurity Alliance, Stop Badware, my own organization, Tech America, the U.S. Internet Service Provider Association, and the U.S. Telecom Association. Thank you all. You can find out more about us at www.industrybotnetgroup.org, including information from a variety of resources for combating botnets, some of which you've heard about today. We look forward to our continued engagement with the administration on key partnerships in this important endeavor. So allow me to join everyone up here in thanking Howard, too, for your leadership, your commitment to partnership, and your service. I once had the opportunity to testify before Congress, and I thought I had to carry on the cooking analogy that has been brought forward today. I had the opportunity to answer the question, well, aren't there too many cooks in the kitchen for cybersecurity? And I said, well, I would really hate for you to think that there are too many people working on cybersecurity, because that is clearly not the problem. We don't have enough. But we do need a head chef. So thank you, Howard, for being our head chef.
Okay. Well, Liesl, thank you so much, and I don't know that I've ever had been on a resume put anything about cooking ability, but thank you for that. As Liesl said, and that you've heard all along, the IPG, along with the leadership from the Internet Service Providers, financial sector, has identified a number of areas in which the voluntary action can be taken today to address opportunities for education, detection, notification, remediation, and measurement of the botnets. Now, normally at this point, at least we had planned that Secretary Janet Napolitano would be joining us, but unfortunately I was just informed that she's been delayed and will not be able to make it today, which is unfortunate because I would have had an opportunity to tell you what a great leader she has been in this area. When you look across the President's key cabinet members, clearly, take that back. She did make it. Andy, we knew we got you over here. Anyway, as I started to say, she has been a great leader in this area, been a great champion for cybersecurity. She has a lot of things, including moving into a chair very, very quickly. Secretary Janet Napolitano, thank you very much.
Timing is everything. Hi, good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you. Let me begin by thanking Howard. Howard, as you know, is moving on to other things, and he's just done a wonderful job and been a wonderful colleague in this important and growing area of concern to the nation. So Howard, you leave with our gratitude for your service and just your friendship as a colleague. Thank you. We have a lot of partners up here with me and in the audience. And as we will be discussing today, we need these partners because the threats we confront really are networked type threats. And it's going to require all of us increasing our efforts and leaning forward to really deal adequately with the cyber challenges that we face. Innovation and the pace of innovation is very, very rapid. Sometimes government is not so rapid, but what we think we are doing really with Mark Weatherford's leadership and other people across federal government is really stepping up the pace and trying not only to be reactive but proactive in the cyber arena. Our cybersecurity as a country is inextricably linked to our economic capability. These things go hand in hand. The systems that we use are interdependent, interconnected, and critical to daily life in the United States. Communication, right? Travel, powering our homes, running our banking systems. These are all interconnected systems. There was a Norton study last year that calculated the cost of cyber crime across the world as about $114 billion per year. But when you add in kind of lost time by personnel and others who then have to deal with the after effects of cyber crime, the Norton study says $388 billion annually across the globe. And I think those are conservative numbers based on the things that come into DHS. But that $388 billion is actually significantly higher than the global market for heroin, cocaine, and marijuana combined. So cybercrime is already outstripping traditional narcotics. We have seen a great increase in cybercrime. I've been the secretary now 3.5 years. I will tell you that probably other than or in addition to Al-Qaeda and Al-Qaeda-related groups like AQAP, the greatest threats and actual activity that we've seen aimed at the West and at the United States has been in the cyber arena. So we're talking here about really, unfortunately, a growth area, and that's going to require even greater interconnection between us. We have taken a number of steps at the Department of Homeland Security. One is to deploy better tools across the federal government to protect its critical systems. Another is to share more information with other public and private sector partners, which is very important. We are on a path now to build a cyber system that underpins a secure, resilient infrastructure and that encourages innovation. And as much as we're doing, we're not doing enough. Right now, Congress has before it legislation known as the Cybersecurity Act of 2012. It is a bipartisan bill. It is co-sponsored by Senators Lieberman, Collins, Rockefeller, and Feinstein. So the chairs of all the relevant committees that have an important role here. We're hoping that that legislation is able to move to the floor of the Senate in the next month or so, and because there is a growing awareness in a bipartisan way of the kind of activity that we have, and that federal legislation is also needed in addition to the actual efforts we're undertaking right now. Government, however, is going to be only one piece in this puzzle. Cyber is shared responsibility. As I said, we are networked. We are all in this together, literally, not just figuratively. So private sector and every individual user who's on the network has a responsibility here, and there are things that can be done to increase the security of the system. in a world of shared responsibility and shared risk, I think we can put as a subcategory and a major one the topic of today's meeting, which is the botnet, because there we really are only as strong as our weakest link. That's why the White House, the Department of Commerce, FCC, and the DHS are coordinating with the industry botnet group to address this rather complicated issue. And we are also working to expand a public awareness campaign called Stop, Think, Connect. This is a very straightforward campaign. It educates individual users about things they can and should do to maintain good cybersecurity, good cyber hygiene, and it is proven very effective for those who could be future victims of a botnet or another type of cyber attack. So if you represent a company or entity that's not on the Stop, Think, Connect campaign already, connect them. Let's get them joined up and let us help you in that regard. I cannot overstate the urgency of this situation. We are looking at cyber attacks from a variety of vectors, with a variety of tactics and techniques that are being employed. They are changing all the time, and it's going to really require our best efforts and our best minds to stay ahead of this. I wanted to say emerging threat, but I'm just going to say threat. It's here with us now, and we have to accept our responsibilities and meet them. And I think with this group and others that have been assembled, we're in the process of doing that. So have a good meeting today, good conference, but I hope when you leave this room, you leave it with a sense of urgency about the situation. We really don't have time to waste. Thank you very much.
Madam Secretary, thank you so very much for those, not only the kind personal words, but also your leadership. The Department of Homeland Security, the country, and the Internet as we know it is safer for all your efforts. Thank you once again for coming over this morning. The Secretary talked about some of the issues that I think rooted in the discussions here today: education, awareness, information sharing. These are some of the fundamental elements, the principles that IBG is announcing today. So in closing, I want to just take a moment and sort of hit on one of my favorite topics, and that's the role of government. We've been discussing the role of government and in cybersecurity. Back in the days, it was information security, and the days of PDD 63, almost 15, 16 years ago now. So when we look at the government's role, we draw on the expertise from the widest range of players within the government. Many of you know that's been working with my office over this time. I have the ability to reach out across government, get tremendous talent. And the good thing about it is every time I have to arm wrestle some of our great leadership in the departments, and they say, we really need this person, they're the best at it, they're able to backfill with somebody just as talented and is just as vibrant in this area. So we do have a lot of people that are well-versed in this issue, can deal with it. But we also need to make sure that when we look at that education, the consumer privacy are some of the things that our law enforcement community can help us with. So when we look across that part of government as well, the government will always have a role to play when it comes to the law enforcement piece of it. The law enforcement defenders, Tom Grosso, the Assistant Section Chief for Cyber Division of the FBI, Secret Service, William Noonan, the Special Agent in charge of the United States Secret Service for the cyber piece. Those organizations were very key, working with the private sector partners in direct engagement in the core flood botnets, which enabled, and the estimates are just in the United States alone, to reduce that problem about 90% and globally by 75%. But they also work very closely with the National Cyber Investigations Joint Task Force, the NCIJTF, which once again brings together the various representatives from law enforcement agencies to deal with these issues and to coordinate on this. But in the whole government approach, we will continue to leverage the diverse assets that we have. Brian Peretti, Brian, where are you? I know you were here. Oh, there you are. From the Treasury Department, who's been working for years and years on this issue with the financial services. DHS, Mark Weatherford, Deputy Undersecretary for Cybersecurity, and Bruce McConnell. I haven't seen Bruce. I'm not sure if he made it over here, but I know you have been leading the area for the Department of Homeland Security. And of course, defending our military assets and national assets through coordination with the Department of Defense. Eric, I think I saw you. Rosenbach is here, who's the Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Department of Defense. And add on top of that, General Keith Alexander from NSA, who's been a long advocate of dealing with these issues, particularly BOTNETS, Air Force Office of Special Investigations, Army CID, the men and women of the military that do this on a day-to-day basis, as well as the Defense Cybercrime Center. You know, we have a tremendous cadre of expertise, both the civilian and the military side of the government. But with all this, obviously, it still continues to require the closest coordination from our private sector partners, which is all of you. So together today, we are building the capacity to identify, isolate, and respond to all forms of cyber threat, and we are implementing new standards for cybersecurity that protects our most important networks, from our critical infrastructure to our .coms, to our home computers, and to our financial markets. We must continue to push forward. As the President said, that this is a task that lies before us. We must never let down our guard nor suffer another failure of imagination. It's time for us to bring sustained and aggressive cooperation to protect all of our nations and our citizens against the new dangers in cyber. And to build on what Secretary Napolitano said, this is not an emerging threat. This is something that has been with us for quite a while, and it's good that we're all bringing our resources together to deal with it. So working together, I feel very confident we continue to make improvements that will ensure the security and resilience we need to prosper as a nation. Someone once compared cybersecurity to a soccer game, and I think back to the soccer games that I've watched that are sort of going from one side of the court and kicking the ball back and forth, and I think we've way outstripped that. We are now almost indeed like a football game. We may have our setbacks, but we do have a forward motion we go with through every quarter we play, and constantly we have good teams put together, we have expertise put together, and we constantly, with the leadership from private sector, we have our quarterbacks multiple strings deep on this as well. So with that, I like to say, as I oftentimes do, we can all do our part to secure our part of cyberspace. I thank you all very much for participating here today, but more importantly, what you do on a day-to-day basis, because you are making a difference. Thank you very much for attending.